Thank you, Chair. We're live on YouTube, so I'll hand over to you to start. So you're muted, Chair.
How did that happen? Somebody muted me. Good evening, and everyone, and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual consultative scrutiny meeting on the 8th of September 2022. I'm your chairman, Mike Allen. I would like to welcome everyone who's watching the meeting via live streaming. I'd like to remind both members and the public attending that the Council has delegated much of its decision-making power to our senior officers until 31st of October 2022. This is due to concerns relating to the COVID risk and the regulations about meeting online. Consequently, this meeting is being held remotely and on a consultative basis only, but we will continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our Constitution. The meeting can be viewed live online and will be recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. And I'd remind colleagues, members, officers, to be careful with their language and that the code of conduct applies throughout our meeting. And we reserve the right to remove and disconnect anyone who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. I'd be grateful if you could turn any telephone devices off or make them silent. And as this meeting is dependent on internet connections and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connections or power cut, please bear with us as we try and reconnect. But if after 15 minutes we're not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. And please check the committee page for our website for details on this. I'd also at this point just mention that in view of Her Majesty's present situation, it may be that this meeting will come to an end quite suddenly because we would not wish to compromise any of the other needs that occur. Please make sure all your microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. And if you could keep your points short, it will please Mike Howe. And if you could please avoid repeating points that you've already made, that would help. Also, please don't interrupt others, because if you wish to comment, all you need to do is just raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, worldwideweb.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Please can you unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you've confirmed that you are here, please mute your microphone again. Sarah, if you could take over, please.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Allen.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. I think Councillor Bailey's arriving late. Councillor Bonetta.
Present, thank you. However, I will need to leave at around 6:45. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce.
Present, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman. No. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor Key.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Rylance.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Whibley.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm the meeting is quorate.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Now, it's quite a sad occasion, this meeting, because our previous Vice Chair, Val Ranger, unfortunately has died. And I know that we're going to miss her. She was an excellent help to me and to many other members, and a really lovely person. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that we're going to miss her and deeply regret her demise. The leader of council has requested that Jamie Kemp should become Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Although it's officially not the case until October, I'm very grateful that Jamie has agreed to stand, and subject to the agreement of committee members, he will then take on the role of Vice Chair. So please would members acknowledge by green ticks if they're in agreement with this particular approach.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 8 green ticks in favour.
Fine, thank you very much. Jamie, over to you as Vice Chair, and we look forward to you backing me or even taking over if necessary. So thank you very much for being willing to do the role. Is there any public speaking, please?
No, there isn't, Chair.
No, I thought there might not be. Let's go to agenda number 2 with the minutes of the previous meeting. Now, there are 2 elements to this. There was a meeting held on the 7th of July 2022, and it was referred back by the full council meeting on the 20th of July 2022 before we'd actually approved the minutes, which is, I think, very unusual. Really what the issue was that a number of councillors didn't like the inclusion of a letter from Mr. Ely, who was representing the Chamber of Commerce, Sidmouth Chamber of Commerce. Whereas, as far as my chairmanship is concerned of this committee, I am very keen for people to be heard. It's quite clear that officers need to organise and screen some of these things, and so do members need to see them in advance. So we will no longer include the minutes, no longer include the Sidmouth Chamber of Commerce letter in our minutes. But I do acknowledge that they were deeply upset, not only by the parking service charge increase, but also by the way in which the whole matter was handled. Now, we've already discussed it. There's no point going over that agenda again, but I would like to suggest in future that letters that come in should be circulated to members of this committee so that they can read them in advance. We have a scheme whereby there's a certain period of time, I think 48 hours before, after which, letters won't be included, but we will acknowledge them in the minutes by simply referring to them. We're not in a position really of debating things that we don't know about, clearly. And so that change, I hope, is agreeable to everybody. Does anybody disagree? Okay, I'll take...
Chair, can I just confirm? I think it's the June minutes, rather. I think you said July. Just for completeness, it's the June minutes, not the July ones.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was the July minutes, but if it's June minutes, it's the June minutes. Fine.
Shall I read the wording that I think the monitoring officer suggested in just to cover the point off, the suggested wording?
I think we're fairly clear, Anita. Very briefly,
Okay.
can you read it through?
Okay, it is brief. The committee noted that, so this would go into the minutes, the committee noted that a written statement had been submitted in advance of the meeting by a member of the public, Mr. Richard Ely, by email to Scrutiny Committee members. While the chair asked that the statement be set out in full in the meeting minutes, it was highlighted that the statement had not been seen by the monitoring officer nor discussed by the committee and may contain claims that are incorrect. So just to record the position, Chair.
Yeah. So the policy in future will be to circulate any letters that we receive to members. Obviously, they'll be acknowledged in the minutes, but they won't be published unless they are received within 48 hours of the meeting. Everybody happy with that? Please, could you vote on it, please? Because I want to get this crystal clear. If you could.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's 10 green ticks in favour.
Fine. We're all on the same page now. That's good. Okay. So the next thing is the minutes of the meeting of 7th of July 2022. Does anybody have any thing that they wish to raise, or can I agree that they are an accurate record of the meeting? I take the complete absence of reaction as the approval of the minutes. Thank you very much, committee. We will move on to any apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Gardner, Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Woodward.
Thank you very much. Sarah did that without moving her lips. I'm sorry, who else is from the officer side?
Sorry?
Was that you, Sarah?
Yes, it was me. Yes.
Oh, right. Oh,
no, I was
fine.
turning to the side. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. I hope the rest of the meeting is a little bit more easy for me than this. Okay. We're heading rapidly on point 4 into the issue of declarations of interest. I have no declarations of interest. So as we go through, please could we record anybody else's declaration of interest as we're taken through?
Thank you. So after yourself, Chair, Councillor Bailey, who's now joined. Councillor Bailey, you're on mute, I think.
Hi.
Do you have any declarations?
I don't have any
Hello.
declarations. I'm sorry I'm a bit late. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonetta.
Thank you. No declarations to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Sarah. No declarations of interest to my knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Chapman, who's now joined.
Sorry I was late. No declarations, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Yep, no declarations from me either. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
None, dear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Rylance.
No, nothing. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Wibley.
None, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Then moving on, point 5, matters of urgency. We seem to have no matters of urgency and no confidential or exempt items on point 6. So on point 7, there are apparently no decisions made by Cabinet called in by members. I believe that's correct, Sarah?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Okay. So we'll move rapidly to point 8, which is a report on planning and South West Water.
So, Chair, Mr. Freeman's in the meeting to introduce the report.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this report's a factual report, really, that follows on from previous discussions members have had over the role of South West Water. And really this report's about the role of planning in terms of wastewater, water supply and water quality issues and our relationship with South West Water and the concerns members have raised in previous meetings. So I've broken the report down into a series of sections. The first of which is really looking at the policy framework and what the National Planning Policy Framework, National Planning Statements and Planning Practice Guidance notes say with regard to water quality issues. And you'll see that under the duty to cooperate, we have to cooperate with South West Water. All parties cooperate openly and fully in terms of delivery of wastewater infrastructure to support new developments. And then the planning practice guidance sets out various issues that need to be addressed in local plan production with relation to water supply and wastewater infrastructure, water quality issues, and sets out how those should be dealt with. And later in the report, I talk about how we are dealing with those issues in terms of the water cycle study. Then in terms of South West Water, you'll see that since privatisation, the water industry has obviously been regulated by Ofwat, and so they're required to develop their own business plans, and then infrastructure is delivered through the charges that they impose. So unlike some other infrastructure which is funded through the planning system through Section 106 agreements and SIL, in the case of water infrastructure, because it's a privatised industry, it's funded through the charges, and the infrastructure is delivered via their 5-yearly business plan that's agreed with Ofwat. So what are we doing? As I said, we've commissioned consultants to undertake a water cycle study to look at these issues, mindful that we don't necessarily have the expertise in-house to investigate these issues fully and potentially, challenge information that's coming through from South West Water. So among the tasks that the consultants are currently undertaking is ensuring that we can demonstrate through the local plan that there's enough wastewater capacity, both foul and surface water, for the development levels proposed in the plan, that there's enough wastewater capacity for those strategic allocations, adequate water supply for new developments, that flood risk and surface water is limited, that good water quality is maintained, and that natural capital is not degraded. And obviously that's among other things that are included within that commission. And we hope to have that work completed by the end of the year and be able to report that study to Strategic Planning Committee as a key evidence document for the new local plan. Alongside that, we also have consultants who are investigating opportunities for a new community in the western part of the district, and obviously so part of their commission is looking specifically at the infrastructure needed to support that large-scale strategic development if members decided to proceed with that. So that will also give us some more detailed information potentially in terms of that part of the district and what would be needed in that location. Aside from that, in the meantime, obviously we receive planning applications where these issues arise, and those are considered against the policies in the currently adopted local plan, specifically policies EN18 and EN19 that seek to ensure that development does not adversely affect the quality or quantity of either surface or groundwater, and that new development has a suitable foul sewage treatment system. And there's adequate capacity within that system to accommodate the additional loads from the development. Obviously, a lot of that assessment requires consultation and engagement with South West Water and the Environment Agency, and obviously we take on board their recommendations in our assessments and what's reported through to Planning Committee for their consideration. So really that sets out, hopefully quite succinctly, the position from a planning perspective, and will help to inform members' further consideration of these issues, and help members to frame their questions, I suppose, to South West Water, who I understand are being invited to a future meeting as well to take forward members' consideration of these issues. So I hope that's helpful. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. We'll take questions first of all from outside the committee membership. So Councillor Mike Howe.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm sorry for this, Ed, I really am, but I have to ask the question. As the relevant documents, as you've shown today, relate to the local plan, of which the Cranbrook Plan Development Plan document going before strategic planning next week is part of our local plan, has the water assessments that you so claim, not you personally, but in your documents, should be done before any further housing or land allocations are made, fit in with that Cranbrook plan? Because I cannot see how we could stand a legal challenge to people being flooded downstream from sewage and all the usual problems when we adopt a local plan that has not complied with its remit, shall we say. So I'm sorry to labour this, and I thought now was the best time, rather than do it as strategic planning, when I'm going to challenge them severely to say they shouldn't be adopting it. I'd rather you had a chance to sort of answer now and come up with the responses for strategic planning.
Ed, do you want to answer that one?
Certainly, yes. So, of course, much of the development proposed in the Cranbrook plan is taking full development that was already allocated in the adopted local plan. So those developments were already assessed through that process in the way I've outlined that we're working in relation to the new local plan. So that capacity has already been assessed by South West Water, and they were obviously content that was sufficient capacity, and likewise the Environment Agency, that water quality issues would not suffer as a result of that additional growth. The exception to that is the additional expansion areas that were granted through the Cranbrook plan, which I think amounts off the top of my head to about 1,500 additional homes. And for those, we did engage, obviously, again with South West Water and the Environment Agency, and we did not receive objections from them to that additional growth. So those issues have all been considered and were considered through the examination process. So I take the inspector's letter that the Cranbrook plan is sound and ready to be adopted as confirmation that all of the evidence suggests that those issues in terms of water quality and water capacity in terms of wastewater and water supply have been satisfactorily addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Can I come back, please, Chair?
Yes, come back, but don't come back too often, Mike.
No, I'm hoping this is the last time, and you know me, and Mr. Freeman, I'm sorry again. Accepting what you've just said, and I do accept it, that doesn't change the fact our local plan has failed in its remit to ensure people downstream from such developments are not suffering unacceptable, or are suffering unacceptable circumstances from the lack of South West Water to deliver what they should. And I am very nervous about, not making it clear to everybody South West Water doesn't have a legal obligation to do anything. We wish it did, but, and their response to the planning inspectorate when looking at the Cranbrook master plan was flawed, to put it mildly, as was all the other evidence, as we well know, due to the evidence from Wimple, Clis St Mary, and all the other areas that are so affected. So it is more of an open question. Where do we go from here to ensure that we don't fall into this trap again? And how do we mitigate for the problems that have already occurred from Cranbrook being developed in our current local plan and all the rest of Pinho area, and get these problems not only sorted, because in the early local plan there was a sewage treatment works off the side of Cranbrook that Southton then decided it didn't need, etc., which obviously was blatantly wrong. So I'm not having a go at you, Mr. Freeman. We get on well as working companions, sort of thing, but I do need to get this right for my residents and the other residents that are so affected. Terribly sorry.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, yeah, it's a fair point. We need to get it right. Councillor Andrew Moulding, next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is not in the same vein as Councillor Howe, and I apologise if I've jumped in on a completely different topic. But this concerns the phosphate levels in the Axe Valley, which has put a stop on any development of new housing whatsoever in that area. And And the concerns obviously are over development. And if development is created in the Axe Valley, then currently it would appear that the wastewater plant, which currently is at Kilmington, cannot cope with any more development because it can't manage the wastewater. And we already know that that plant is up to capacity. They're having to transport sewage to Exmouth to get rid of the extension of the sewage. And what is being asked is that any development that is proposed has to provide mitigation measures to enable that work to proceed. Now, for me, that puts an extra responsibility on developers. Developers are having to come up with some mitigation measures, reed beds or whatever, which could take some time to develop. Yet for me, the problem is not that of the developer, but that of South West Water, who haven't got the necessary infrastructure to enable wastewater in our area to be dealt with. So my question to Ed is there a responsibility on South West Water to provide the necessary measures to cope with wastewater, or is it purely down to developers to come up with expensive and lengthy mitigation measures to enable development to proceed in our area rather than to create stagnation?
Okay, I think that's a particular issue with Axminster, but it would be good if we could get an answer to the particular point about South West Water's responsibility versus developers. Thank you, Ed, if you could.
Thank you, Chair. I will try. I mean, I think it's obviously a very complex issue in terms of nutrients in the River Axe, and I don't think it would be fair to say that it's South West Water's fault. They're obviously a party in this, and perhaps have to take some of the responsibility for that. But ultimately, they, as I understand it, are operating within their license and treating the water to the extent that they are required to do under that license. Obviously, the responsibility of the developer is to ensure that their development does not have any greater impact on those issues than prior to development. So it's not unreasonable to require them to mitigate the impact of their own development. That is a common principle for all developments. We expect them to mitigate their impacts. And this is an additional impact that up till now developers haven't been required to mitigate. And I think it's appropriate that they are required to do so. And obviously that mitigation is proportionate to the impact that they have. South West Water, however, are also, as I understand it, investing heavily in the infrastructure in that area to try and help to resolve these issues. But as I say, I think the fundamental principle is for developers to mitigate the impact of their development, and that's all they're being required to do. So I don't think that's unreasonable. We need to work through how we deliver that mitigation and help them to do that. That's work that's in progress, and obviously we'll be reporting further on those issues to Strategic Planning Committee as work progresses. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I mean, this committee is really not about criticising any officer situation, and I hope, Ed, you don't take it that way. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to establish the factual situation and constructively come up with any suggestions to help. So let's move still outside the committee to Maddie Chapman. Sorry, not Maddie, Megan Armstrong. I'll get it right. Megan, please.
Sorry, I was just on mute. Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to know an awful lot about this, but I do remember a few months ago when South West Water came to speak to us, and I can't for the life of me remember whether it was to Scrutiny or I can't remember which committee it was, but they came to
Scrutiny.
Was it Scrutiny? Yeah. And they gave a very good account of themselves. And, you know, I was left thinking, oh, yes, they're doing all right. Not long after that, we get this national report saying that they're one of the worst authorities in the water authorities in the country. And I'm not asking this of Ed, because as for what you've just said, because I wouldn't want to criticise officers, but it's just a thought that's come to me. How confident are we in accepting? How can we trust them? Basically, I suppose that's the question. And how confident are we in the communications we have with them in future? If they seem to be not always being straight with I've got to pick my words carefully here, but you know, I just question, you know, how we can work with an organisation that doesn't seem to be always telling us the proper story and the truth. It's just a comment, really. As I say, I don't want to say anything to Ed particularly and put him on the spot, and he probably couldn't answer that anyway. But it's just an open question that bothers me. That it just bothers me, really, and I'll leave it at that for now. And other people might follow that up. But I'm thinking particularly about the waste, that, you know, the sewage issues we've got at the minute, and you know, it just, you know, we've got to work together as a local authority and with a water authority to be able to plan any new builds confidently.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think there's just been an announcement regarding the Queen. You might need to chat with your officers.
Okay.
It's just been announced by Buckingham Palace.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it just come up.
Right.
Buckingham Palace has announced that the Queen has died peacefully at Balmoral.
Oh.
Well,
Chair,
I think at this point, I think that we stop, because my mother knew the Queen. She was a really tremendous lady. When my mother was a lady's maid, she knew her. I feel that it would be completely inappropriate to continue this meeting. So we'll reconvene at a later date, and Sarah is already arranging it. Thank you very much, members. I'm sorry we've all gathered and done a lot of work in advance, but this is a very, very sad time for our country. And this is a mark of respect to stop and reconvene at another time. I hope you understand.
Thank you, Mike.